All right, we just finished the Jimmy Allen Silver Streak, okay? Now the structure of this has been sitting around for months, so I just spent some time covering it to finish it up. So I really haven't been building for like 5 months, so I kind of feel like doing another build. Okay, now this time I think what I'm going to do is a scale job, and I just want to give you a heads up. Basically, I'm not a scale builder, all right? In fact, I like to do the old timers in these kind of candy colors here, because that way if you get a lot of damage on the fuselage, I can fix it over and over again and you can't see it. Okay, so I'm not great on detailing or anything like that, all right? But, you know, doing this, and I really like this kind of 1930s racer look, so that kind of got me in the mood to do something like that. So here's the one I'm going to do, okay? This is a very, very well-known plane among modelers. It's called the Chambermaid, all right? It's got a 22-inch span. Now, there's a couple things here. Normally, with RC rubber, I don't like to go less than about 28 inches because I think the equipment becomes, you know, a significant part of the weight at that point. Okay, I've done a few 24 inches, but you know, with the extra weight, they fly kind of fast and it affects the glide. All right, but this has a gigantic wing, so you know, it's incredibly wide. So I'm sure we got over 100 square inches of area here, so I think it'll be good. Now, I've been debating about whether or not to make the wing removable. If I made it removable, I'd probably have a double former here, and then you could just lift the whole top off. Okay. However, I'm debating about that. I might just build it in one piece, okay? The bad part about that is I can't get it in my box, but I can put it in a separate bag and bring it out separately when I'm gonna fly it, all right? Now, another consideration is normally it has retracted landing gear, and normally I love that in scale. I'd be thrilled with that when I was a kid. Anytime I had retracted landing gear, it was great, all right? You land in the grass, it's less weight, it's less drag. Unfortunately, I can't do that because I think landing on the AstroTurf, it's just going to slice up the poly span there in the bottom, okay? It's like little razors. So I'm going to have to put the wheels down, okay? Now, fortunately, I've looked at pictures of the Chambermaid. It's pretty easy. It has a simple little V landing, all right? Now, my only other concern is I hope it's not too short for the prop. So this comes with like a 10-inch prop, but if you look at the outer zone plan there, that shows a 10-inch freewheel, all right? I'm sorry, actually the kit comes with an 8-inch prop, but you know, online I saw it had a 10-inch freewheel, and that sounds about right to me, so I think I'm going to use a 10-inch prop here, okay? The other thing that kind of encouraged me a little bit is I also tried, you know, I used that just for flowers, and they do have a white one here, I'll show you, and this is cream colored, but they have an ivory one, and so I did some tests with it. Let me grab it here. So I always do some tests like this, and I thought, hey, this looks okay, and it's a little translucent, so it might look nice. So I think that's what I'm going to try. All right. I also, by the way, I was working on the Keelcraft Ace. You can see we got it going here a little bit. Built really fast, but I don't really need another high performance right now, so I think I'm going to get to work on this. Now, I have the kit from Easy Built, okay, and from what it says on the plan there, I must have bought this in 2009. That was their 77th anniversary. All right, and here's the kit. It's got the wheels and a spinner. I'm not going to use these. It's got the little side exhaust. Got a nice vacuum form canopy there, which is really, really nice. It's got all the parts. So I've had this kit sitting around since 2009. Okay, so I think it's about time to get to work on it. All right. So I think that's pretty much everything. The only other things I'm thinking about is I'll probably do these as laminated because with 16-inch I've had problems. Maybe the rudder as well. Let's see how I feel about that. All right. And the rest of it looks like it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to get going on this and see how it goes. Okay, the Chambermaid. Now it's actually 4 years later since the previous segment. I built it 4 years ago, but then I, you know, kind of just got off onto something else, and it's been sitting around ever since. I think most modelers know this happens sometimes, okay? So I decided recently, you know, I mean, there's COVID and there's no indoor flying, so I'm doing more outdoor building, and I thought this is a good time to maybe finish it up or at least get the wing mounted. All right, so let me show you what I did here. So I originally was thinking maybe I'll make the wing removable, but I really like this long nose with the stringers, and I didn't want to break that up. So I ended up gluing the wing on. I can still get it in my box, but I ended up gluing the wing on.
All right, here's a couple of other things. Now you'll see one thing I did here is this is very light, super light balsa, and it's not very thick. I put this on just to widen it up so that when I cover it with the Mylar, it's really got something to stick to. You don't want it just hanging on a little rib like that. You really want something for it to stick to, and I did it on the bottom as well, if you can see here. Okay, so this way it'll be much easier to cover the top and bottom. I also filled in where the rib is. You can't just have space, all right? It's the tissue or Mylar or whatever. It has to have something to stick to. So I got a piece of very light balsa and I filled it in. That was a little tedious. It was tricky on the top because there were gaps here, okay? And I filled those in as well, all right? You can see here in the front, I filled in a little bit. What are you going to do with that space? And same with the back. What are you going to do here? You're just going to stick the Mylar on there. It's going to pull up. It's not going to look right. So I filled it in with balsa all the way so that it'll sit right and it'll cover correctly. Okay. I put a little platform in here because that's going to be for the pilot, Russell, to Russ Chambers. So he's got some place to glue him in. Another important thing is I added stringers. There was just one here and then the top and bottom, but then when you cover it, it's going to stick to the formers and you don't want that. So I put one in at the top here and then two in at the bottom. All right, and that, first of all, that makes it stronger, and that's important. Second, you know, I could get them evenly spaced, and if you look at pictures of the real Chambermaid, you can see the structure in the back, and it's evenly spaced like that. So I think it looks a lot nicer. Now for the RC, what I did is I made a little removable panel. Here it is, and that just slips in here. And then I'm just going to use a little screw hole down in the front and the back. Okay, and then I can put the equipment in there. I'm also going to have the wheels mounted, the landing gear mounted there as well, so it'll be removable. All right, I lined it with balsa like this because, you know, if you're doing something like here's a receiver, here's a lemon receiver, you stick in the receiver, oops, I just poked a hole in the covering with the antenna. I've actually done that. So that's why I lined it with a little bit of balsa so you don't have that problem. Okay. You can see I started scalloping here. You don't want the, you know, the poly span is what I'm going to use to stick to the board frame. It looks better when it's just on the stringers. Of course, you don't do that where the cockpit is, right? Same here, and I still have to scallop those. I'm working on it. I got the nose block, okay, and I started sanding it. I still got to do a little fine sanding, but we got that going, and here it is. It's got a nice, I always make, you know, fairly thick plugs, so it'll go right in there. Okay, I think that's everything on that I wanted to mention. Let's see, I also made the rudder. Let me move this over. There it is. Okay, I hinged. I still have to put the hinge in, but there it is. I did this laminated in one piece. It just looks nicer. And also the wingtips you'll see here I did laminated because with big wingtips like that you need the strength. On the other hand, for the stabilizer I didn't bother with that because they're very small. So here I just used the part from the from the kit. Okay, and I'm not going to glue this in when I put it in because you got to have something to adjust there. So I'll make it so the stab's adjustable. Let's see, one other point is they show window in the plan on the right. Here's for the window on the right and left, but if you look at Hip Pocket, some discussion, and they show scale pictures, it really only had the window on the right. So I just put the window on the right to keep in line with, you know, it being in scale. Okay, and so we're almost ready. I still have to get the landing gear. I got to put the switch in, the equipment, a couple other things, get everything ready, and then we'll be ready for covering. Okay, so I think it came out pretty good. And we'll get to the next part. I'll show you, I have some ideas what I'm going to do with the nose cone. I'll show you that as well. Okay, the Chambermaid. Now it's actually 8 months since the previous frame, so I've just been doing a few little things. But we're finally at the point where we're ready to cover, okay? The front was done as I showed before. I just have them, and I have the gizmo nose button in there, so that's ready to go. That's important because you want to make very fine adjustments on the thrust. So you need to be able to make nice thrust adjustments, okay? Now I had showed you the bottom, but now I got it ready for the landing gear. Let me show you. This is where the equipment goes in here, okay? You can see I put the landing gear on it. And I looked at diagrams and things like that, and I think this is close to the scale length, all right? So that plugs in. You can see I put a tongue in it, to keep it centered. So that goes in like that. Then it just slips in, and then there's a hole down here. Okay, and I actually have a little extra balsa under there to keep it on. And then I also have one here, and that turns down like this to hold it so the front doesn't slip down like that. That holds it in nice and tight. So we're ready to go on that, okay? This is where the switch is going to go. And then let me see, let me turn it over here. The servo is going to go up here, okay? And then I'm going to have the wires come down and slip in. You can see I made holes on the inside so that the wire will go along there up until the receiver. All right, let's see what else I did. On the wing, I wasn't happy. I just thought it was a little too flexible, so I put a 16 by an eighth on the bottom here. Let me get the camera up a little bit. I put a 16 by an eighth on the bottom there, okay? Like this, you can see from the front it's got a top and bottom. That made it nice and stiff. I filled in where the cockpit went. All right, there, that's where the rest of the cockpit goes. I also added a couple stringers. Here I thought the spacing was kind of wide here, so I added some stringers there, all right, as well. And I had mentioned earlier I added some on the side. I also did that with the stab too because I thought it was a little too thin. I think you can see it here that there's actually a bottom stringer. I don't like not having bottom stringers, so I added one in on the stab. And I also put some filler in here on the side so there's no opening or anything. It'll cover nice that way. Now if I need, right now it has some positive incidence on the wing, which is what I usually use. It's got a little negative on the stab. Now if I need to take that out, I can just trim away some of the balsa here and do an adjustment. So I'm just kind of tack glue that in for now, okay? And then I put a tail skid on as well. I have some wheels here. They're the same size as the other ones. They're balsa, but I painted them black. Here's the fin and the rudder. Let me put that down. Okay, so I have to cover it and then I'll hinge it and put it together. All right, we're gonna have the push rod there. I painted Russell, the pilot, just a little bit there to get a little going on him. So he's gonna be inside. It's a pretty tight fit, pretty realistic in that sense. I have a couple of 10-inch props. These are quarter props. These are the blanks that I got from Volare. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make some 10-inch props. Okay, and that's what we use to power it. So I believe that's everything. We're pretty much ready to go. After I glue in the stab, then I can glue on the rudder or the fin like this. Okay, and then we're pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to get covering it. I'm going to start with the fuselage. That's going to be polyspan light. All right, and I'll do it in strips. Probably I'll cover it from the bottom to the top. I'll do the bottom, then you can trim it off here. Then I'll do the side, trim it off there. This piece I'm going to have to do probably separately. You can also see I doubled up the stringers here. You see? That way you got something nice for the polyspan to stick to, because then I think I'll have to do a separate piece here. All right, because it's just too many curves to get it all in one piece. And I'll work my way up and then finally do the top. This is going to be tricky. I have to do this center part. Of course, I've got plenty of empty room there, so I'll have something to stick the Mylar to. So that should work out pretty nice. All right. So I think I'm actually going to get covering here, and then we'll come back and see how that goes. Okay, the Chambermaid. Well, here it is another 8 months later, but we finally got it done. And let me show you what we've done here. Now I say a little bit more about the prop, the front end in another video. We got the usual hairpin, and everything's removable. It's got a freewheel. That nose is going to fall off. I don't have the motor in there. There it is. And let's see. So the fuselage, I covered it with polyspan light, which is what I usually do. And I put 2 coats of dope on it. And I like using the polyspan light. Now the only bad thing is when I sprayed it this time, which I sprayed it this white, okay, it's very opaque. So it just the polyspan light is very porous. So I thought it looked better before I sprayed it. That's the bottom line, all right? Because you could just see the porousness a little bit more because it's too opaque. Now if I had it to do a second time, they make a very nice translucent yellow, and if you do the yellow, then you don't see the porousness. It'll look really good. Okay, so that would be my recommendation. All right, we got the wheels on. Let me take that off because it's okay. We got the wheels on. These are balsa, and then I put the pants, and the pants don't sit on the rods like in the real one, okay, they sit up off it if you look at the picture. So I used a little .015 wire, and I'm also hoping maybe that'll give it a little springiness, it'll keep it from breaking as much. Now if you look at pictures of the real one, there's a hole here, so I put the black tissue there. I thought it looked better. It's kind of what the real one looks like. Here's the servo. I put on the 21. Okay, now putting the tissue decal on here was not a problem. Basically what I did is I put a little Yoo-hoo glue stick on the back of the decal, then I put it in place, and I took a brush with a little bit of rubbing alcohol because that dissolves the glue, and then it just sits real nice, and I thought it came out real nice. All right, so I'm happy with that. There was a problem with the Mylar. So for the wing I did a 1/3 mil Mylar, and the stab and rudder is a 1/4 mil Mylar. Let's see, on the front there's a cylinder here. I put that there, if you can see that. And I put the exhaust over here. Okay, here's the other side, another 21. Now I didn't put on the decal on the fin here or on the wing, and I'll tell you why. So I put it on the wing here, but here's the problem I had. And I did a test and I knew this was going to happen. So I put a little bit of Yoo-hoo on it, stuck it down. I tried to use as little alcohol as possible, basically because what happens is it shrinks it slightly, and that makes wrinkles in the Mylar. Okay, now you might be able to shrink them out, but you know, in this case I was pretty much able to shrink them out, but there's a big decal over here and I didn't want to use that because I was worried about getting wrinkle problems. If I did this over again, what I would do is I would get the watermark decals. Those would be perfect because water doesn't affect the Mylar, so you can easily just put those on, no problems. That's what I'd recommend. Okay, let's see, I put on the outlines for the ailerons and the rudder and stuff. I did it on the top and on the bottom. Now this is where the equipment is. I think I showed you that earlier, and here it gets held in. So we got the receiver and the battery is in there. Here's the switch, so I can turn it on. Yeah, that's the way I save on the battery. I just flick it on when I'm ready to go, check, and we're ready to go. Now I put the pilot in there. You can see Russ. All right, so I painted him. Now actually this does go out here a little bit. They put tissue there, but I didn't want to do that with the poly span. So if I did it again, I would put a little balsa there or something like that. Okay, so I think that's everything. I think we're ready to go. I'm going to go out. I'm curious to see how this glides and do some test glides with it. All right, it was a lot of fun. It took me 5 years, but we finally got it done. Okay, so that's it, the Chambermaid. We'll go out, let me get it down here, and we'll get some nice test flights going. There you go. All right, I made a box specifically for the Chambermaid. Okay, a little bigger than I thought. Here's the handle here. I got a nice leather handle on it. And it basically, it lays up against that. Here, let me rotate it around. You can leave on the prop and everything, and it's in there pretty good. You know, once the lid's on, it's not going anywhere. The wheels, I'll put a little mount for that separately, and it fits in there nice. Okay, I should probably make it sooner or later. I'll make it so I can throw some other planes in there, but right now I'm just using it for the Chambermaid. Okay, there you go. Doesn't look too bad. Come on, baby. There you go. Look at that. It still stalls, and boy, I got a lot of down thrust in that. And it's still stalling a little bit. Okay. Alright, we got some nose damage, but we're going for it anyway. Here we go. Holy shit. Come on, baby. That's not bad. Still got a little stall. Gotta watch the trees. Yeah, still has a little bit of stall, but it's not bad. Woo. Whoa, it's tight because these soccer guys are here. So here we go. Here's Russ coming by, and there we are. Got a little nose damage.